I'm a pastor's wife. Pastors don't go to rehab. I'm a mom. There's no way this could be happening to me.
On the outside, Irene Rollins looked like she had it all. She and her husband were pastors at a growing church. They had a house, 3 children, even a dog. But inside, she was dying a slow death.
I was completely just falling apart and unraveling. I had sort of a midlife crisis in my 30s, and things undealt with pain began to come up and resurface. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I began to numb that pain with alcohol. I thought I was just drinking for stress relief, or to celebrate, or just to have a glass of wine with dinner. But slowly but surely, my dependence was growing, and I was numbing all of the pain and undealt with issues from my past.
As Irene's dependence turned into denial, Irene's family suffered.
Here I am operating at the church as if everything's fine and normal. At home, what it looked like was relational issues with my husband. We began to argue over how much I drank. My oldest daughter was hiding my 2 younger ones under pillows to block them from the arguments that we were having. I began to distance myself in my relationship with my husband. What I would do was begin to hide it. So I'd have 2 glasses of wine in front of him, but I'd be hiding vodka underneath the kitchen sink or in a water bottle so that he wouldn't know how much alcohol I was consuming. And that gap that I was feeling was felt by my children at all. They were angry with me, but didn't know how to articulate, why is mommy choosing alcohol over us? Why are mommy and daddy fighting about alcohol? Why can't she just stop? I fought tooth and nail. I did not want to admit or acknowledge that I had a problem with alcohol. 1 was too much and 1,000 wasn't enough. That's when I knew I was hitting rock bottom.
When all attempts to reach Irene failed, a close circle of friends and family intervened.
My husband pretty much gave me an ultimatum and found a rehab center that specialized in treating addiction through the lenses of trauma, because they could see that alcoholism was literally just the symptom of all the other things that were happening on the inside of me. So during my 40 days of rehab, we started digging. They helped me unpack where the drinking started. I was beginning to have flashbacks of sexual abuse in my childhood. I was beginning to acknowledge all of the traumas that I had growing up, from date rape to things like verbal and physical abuse from men. And as I began to unpack those things and receive healing and go to AA meetings and hear stories from other people and their breakthrough, I began to get hope for myself. There was one thing I was holding on to. I was not gonna say that I was an alcoholic. And on day 38, I had a moment where I would call it an encounter with God, where God spoke to me and said, Irene, you're looking at the world through distorted lenses. I realized I was looking at the world through the bottom of a glass, totally distorted, and I couldn't see the people that loved me that were right in front of me, my church family that loved me, my God that loved me despite all of the challenges, despite all of my mistakes. I literally realized that I am an alcoholic and I need to admit it. And in that moment, when I stood in that AA meeting and said, my name is Irene and I'm an alcoholic, it's like a huge weight lifted off of me. God's grace flooded me, and his power was truly made perfect in my moment of weakness. But I had to acknowledge that weakness first before his grace and his power could be perfected in me.
After Irene left rehab, she found even more freedom.
Once I stood in front of my church and shared my story, I realized that they loved me, they empathized with me, and that people were inspired to deal with their own issues to get free as well. They became such great supporters of me and my husband because of the authenticity and the transparency of our story. We became human, we embraced our humanity and our need for a savior. So that inspired me to share my story and punch the enemy in the face every time I share my testimony, because we are overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the power of our testimony. I believe the enemy of shame is freedom. The enemy does not want us free, because when we are free, we share our stories and we set other people free. The relationship I have with my children is amazing now. We're closer as a family unit than we've ever been. My husband and I feel like newlyweds because the intimacy that we're experiencing with one another, sharing every emotion from joy to anger to pain to passion, we're experiencing all of those emotions sober. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "My grace is all you need. My power is made perfect in your weakness." All throughout my life, I've always felt the presence and the guidance of Jesus with me. I was never alone. There is hope, and I'm not meant to do it on my own and in my own strength. I am meant to do it alongside and with my Savior.